Hello everybody, welcome to the online teaching conference. We're here at Long Beach City College. The rest of you out there listening, I hope that you had as good a lunch as we did. I'm Barbara Illowsky, and I'm here to talk to you about Senate Bills 1052, 1053, open educational resources, distance learning, MOOCs, and how they all fit or don't fit together. So just to find out for the people who are here live, how many of you feel that you know pretty much about SB 1052 and 1053? Okay, excellent. How about open ed resources? How many of you use them in your teaching? A few. Distance learning. How many of you are distance learning faculty? Distance learning administrators? Okay, great. And have participated in at least week 1 of a MOOC. Okay, how about completing a MOOC? Wow, bravo. What MOOC did you complete? Signs of Superheroes, that's excellent. I have enrolled in 6 MOOCs, and I've gone as far as week 3 in MOOCs, but I'm one of those lurkers in the background, interested also in how they're run versus that. So I thought I would give you an overview of all of these, and of course 6 months ago or 5 months ago when I submitted my application, in my mind SB 1052 and 1053 were going to be dynamo bills that would have incredible progress going on already. So you'll learn a bit. So open educational resources is a catch-all phrase. It includes some MOOCs, it includes some online textbooks, it includes some distance learning courses, and it includes some ebooks. But not all ebooks are open ed resources. Not all MOOCs are open, even though they have the word open in them, but some of them aren't. Not all distance learning courses are open. So what I'm going to do is, as best I can, I'm going to go inside out with all of these. So I was trying to do this great flow chart of how they all flowed, but I realized that our projectors don't go in 3D. And so it's sort of an inside out convoluted way, and I'd give you some background on all of them. California, for those of you who are from California, I thought it was everybody, and then I was talking at lunch with some people who were from different states. But California passed, and Governor Brown signed into law SB 1052 and 1053. And these became the joint responsibility of the California community colleges, the Cal State universities, and University of California. So let me just go through each of those individually. What I'm going to do at the beginning part of this is I'm going to take you through pretty much definitions of what all of these different items are that I'm talking about and the acronyms, and then we're going to go back and see how they fit together and play together. Also, they will have all my slides, and so I'm not expecting that you are going to memorize that URL or that you need to, but whenever the slides are posted in the portal for this or however they're posted, you'll be able to click on the links to get to these. SB 1052 takes the intersegmental California Academic Senates. That's what ICAS is, intersegmental California Academic Senates. That means there are representatives from the UC, CSU, and community colleges that meet together on a fairly regular basis. And under that group, they establish a 9-person council. 3 members from the CC, 3 members from CSU, and 3 members from UC, and they're going to work together to devise this plan to determine a list of the 50 highest enrolled lower division courses among the systems totally. Now, we have an advantage in this, in that the community college system, the number of students at 2.4 million students, greatly numbers out UC, CSU combined. And so the 50 lower division ones are basically going to be the 50 lower division courses from the California community college system. But it determines a list of courses, and it's going to establish a bill. 1053 creates the open source library. And so what 1052 does is it establishes the council. They do the work to identify the 50 lower division courses. 1053 is a separate bill, but they go hand in hand. And it establishes a library of open educational resources that can be used in place of textbooks for California public university students. And if you want more information, you could either go to the links and find it, or you could come up afterwards, and the first person up here afterwards can take my notes, which has all the legislation talk from that. Now, open educational resources, yes?
So will this be archived later so we can actually go back into it?
Yes. Yes, however, the online teaching conference will do that, yes. The question was, will this be archived? And yes, it will be, so that you can get all the links. You can feel free to do your multitasking now if you'd like, however you'd like. Okay, so let's talk about open educational resources, because that's been a big phrase. OER has been an acronym that's been around for a while, and people don't really know what OER are. Think that just because something is on the web, it must be an open educational resource. That's not necessarily the case. So we have the US Department of Education phrase, which is a shorter phrase. And I will go over explaining what this means about the intellectual property, and I'll give you some examples. And we also have another phrase, that's a description that's been widely accepted, so widely accepted that this is the Wikipedia definition, and it's from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, which is the major funder of the OER movement across the world. And so as an example of an OER, if you have a textbook, and I'm a co-author of a textbook which is an open textbook now, that means that it is copyrighted, but anybody is free to take the textbook, use it, not pay royalties, download it onto their own server, change it around, even sell it, as long as they give attribution to Susan Dean, my co-author, and myself. So you might be thinking, this lady's crazy. Not only did she choose education as a profession, but now she's giving it all away. But I'm going to go on, after I go through all the definitions, and go through the reasons why I believe very strongly in this. Distance learning. Well, most of us are familiar with distance learning. We're here at the online teaching conference. But I thought I would get the actual phrase from Title V so that we don't have to give our own interpretation. Distance learning started as correspondence courses. It actually started probably in the Middle Ages. You would have the very wealthy young men who corresponded with the religious leaders to learn their materials. Now, if you jump from the 1400s to the 1980s, a little bit of a jump there, or even to the after World War II, correspondence courses became much more popular. And I don't know if any of you can remember back, since I don't think there's anybody in the room, maybe one person who's as old as I am in the room, but almost nobody else in the room who's as old as I am. I can remember in the back of comic books that you could right away to do a correspondence course, to learn how to do something, become a bookkeeper at home, or learn how you can become your own boss. That was, usually it was involving stuffing envelopes or something, or some sort of pyramid scheme, but these were correspondence type courses. In the early 1990s, 1992, I think, when I started teaching distance learning at De Anza College, what it was I was in the television studio, and I was teaching statistics, and I might have 2 or 3 students in the audience, per se, but it wasn't participatory, and I lectured for 3.5 hours, and it was broadcast over cable television, and that's how distance learning was done. The students would either come to De Anza to drop off their homework, or they would mail it, and the ones who were in and keep in mind I was in Silicon Valley, but still not everybody had access to a fax machine. But the ones who did have access to a fax machine, which was the high technology of the time, could fax in their homework. I would grade it. They could come and pick it up. So that was how I started with distance learning. And then eventually, it morphed into the way that we teach today, which is mostly online with media. MOOCs, we did hear, fortunately, at least if you were at this morning's keynote session, you know a little bit about MOOCs, and we have one completer in the back who finished a MOOC, so we have one person who's really up on it. Massive online open courses. Massive, somewhere along the line, it was generally accepted that over 1,000 students in a class was considered massive. I'm not sure who did that, but it was probably similar to the integration rules with coming up with if n is over 30, student t distribution approaches the normal distribution. I'm sure it was just as technical as that to decide that 1,000, so 999 students, you do not have a MOOC. 1,000, nope. Greater than 1,000, you're there. Online, the lectures are videoed, there's automated quizzes, there's discussion boards, there are threads, and so on. Open enrollment. So now this is pretty interesting to me because what open enrollment means is that you can take the course, sign up for it, and it's free, right? So unless you want to have a certificate, a lot of the companies now are starting with certificates at the end where you can pay for a certificate, or you could do a, I think another type of way for this would be to do sort of the Kickstarter campaign. Did you like this course? Feel free to click here and submit $5, $10, $15. But remember that these courses are international. And for us to say, hey, that was a cool course, I'd pay $5 for it, is not the same for somebody overseas, depending upon their situation. And course, it's a learning experience. So we have course at the loosest design. Now, I found this graphic of the MOOC here, and I decided I would put it up because of the fact that in the corner, I don't know if you see in the corner, I don't have a laser here, but way down in the right corner, let's see if I can, is the arrow going there, right? So you see that tiny little gray rectangle with a circle in it and a bunch of C's. What this tells me is that this graphic is an open educational resource. It has a license from Creative Commons, and this is the same license that my open textbook that I was telling you that I co-authored has. It's called a CC BY license. I have no idea if you can actually see that, but you will be able to see it after. It's CC BY license, which tells me that I can take this graphic and I can use it in all my presentations, even if I were valuable enough to be paid to come and speak here, as opposed to volunteering with a please accept my proposal, please, please let me come talk. But if I were a paid consultant, I could still use this graphic as long as I give attribution to the person at the bottom. His last name is Plord, and that's his copyright. He has that copyright, and I have the information at the bottom. That's the same license that I have with the textbook, is that as long as there's attribution given back to Susan Dean and myself, and also now, due to a complicated situation, sort of complicated, Rice University as well owns the copyright. They own the copyright now, so they get attribution. All right, so now I'm going to start with going through the Senate bills, since we've gotten a little bit farther there. Sure. So what's done, how I would handle it is I would put based on the original graphic by. Okay. And so I'll just give you an example. There are several, the textbook, Collaborative Statistics, is using the graphing calculator as the number cruncher for it. Other colleges use SAS, SPSS, Minitab, they may use Excel. And so what I've seen there is they put a statement at based on the original textbook by Barbara Illowsky and Susan Dean, copyright by Connections, Rice University. Yeah, and that's what I would do if I were to change this. Let me go back here. If I wanted to add some stuff and I said, you know, I don't like that orange. I want that orange to be in green. Or I want to add some more of my own arrows. Right, and that's the same thing. If somebody, let's say somebody uses something that you produced and they change it, and it's really, could be even wrong. Could be wrong, and so you might not want to have that attributed back to you. So they have that, and then you can say, by the way, when all these emails start coming in, it's like, wow. I mean, let's say you have a graphic that shows 3 + 2 = 5. Somebody changes it, puts 6, and then they get back to you. If it says based on the original, that's usually a hint that somebody's made some sort of a change. You're welcome. It's a good question. Okay, SB 1052, 1053. Let me give you the status of where it's at. The status is it's not where in my heart I was hoping it would be. The 3 organizations, UC, CSU, and California Community Colleges, have picked the council. There's this little part of the bill that says that the legislature is going to appropriate $5 million to the bill, and matching funds need to be raised. And so work will commence when there are some matching funds, which, guess what? So far, there have not been matching funds. So we've been working hard at soliciting from nonprofits to try to get some matching funds, and hopefully we will have some matching funds so that the people can continue along their way. Concerns about these, I've heard concerns from faculty, mostly those are the concerns that I hear from faculty, is this going to take away academic freedom? If there's free information out there, will we suddenly need to be using it? If we have this library in 1053, will I be forced to do that and not use my own materials? Will I be forced to use the videos that have been produced by XYZ Corporation, just some other corporation? What will I have to do? So those are the concerns that I've been hearing from faculty across the state about this. For me, that's not my concern, and I'll explain to you why I feel that way. My concern is that the movement isn't fast enough on getting this going. These 2 bills I helped work on to get through the legislature, and I really want them through. I really want that there's a huge library of free online textbooks so that faculty have the choice. So that I can say when I'm teaching calculus or elementary algebra, wow, okay, maybe I do want to use this textbook that costs $195 and my students have it for 12 weeks. But maybe on the other hand, here's something that I think is just as good that I want to use this. Or maybe I have found other materials that I want to use. And the problem that we have now is it's really hard. If you're not in the know of where all these materials reside, it's really hard to find them. So tomorrow or this afternoon, or I think it's this afternoon, later this afternoon, I'm on a panel with James, who was up on the panel this morning, and Una Daly, and a few others. And we're with people who've been involved for the past at least 8 years on working on open educational resources. So we're relatively in the know about what's happening in Washington State, what's happening in Arizona, what's happening in New York, what's happening overseas in Denmark, what's happening in Indonesia, what's there, what's not there. But that doesn't mean that I can go and I could talk to somebody else and I could say, oh, well, your discipline is humanities. I know just the humanities parts for you. We don't, and they're always changing. So that's why it's really important to have this digital library there so that people can have a way to look at materials, also to look at materials that have been peer-reviewed. Because just because it's up on the web does not mean, 1, that we have free access to use it, and does not mean, 2, that we would even want to use it, right? Just because it's there. So those are some of the major concerns about the 2 Senate bills. Open education resources. So there are a variety of types of open education resources. E-textbooks, textbooks that are on the web, is one type of OER. That's one type, is when you go and you read materials on the web. Online learning courses, there are online courses where you can learn to blah, blah, blah. And I'll just give you an example. Khan Academy is one such example that a lot of people have heard of. If you want to learn how to add fractions, you can go to Khan Academy and you can look up the video for adding fractions. It's an OER, meaning, and I've done this in my own class, I've taken Khan Academy videos, I've embedded it into my own classes, and I've said, as long as I say, these are Khan Academy videos, and actually I use the link that goes right back to them, but it shows that it's Khan Academy videos. I'm not claiming them to be my own. I'm not claiming that I made them. I'm not claiming that. But I don't have to pay Mr. Khan any sort of royalty to use his videos. MOOCs, it's questionable. There are some MOOCs that are OER that anybody can go into, but most MOOCs you actually have to log in and create a password to get to. So there, I put the question mark there under OER with MOOCs because there are some that you can just go right in. You don't have to set up an account. You don't have to set up a password. You can just go in and do it, and there are some that aren't, that are up there. Questions on this part? Okay, now here comes the inside-out convoluted part that we have. E-textbooks. Some of them are open educational resources. So, how many of you have assigned, either for your distance learning class or your face-to-face class, a textbook that has an online option? Okay. And let's see, Chris, for your online option, was the textbook free totally? No. So Chris had said, no, the textbook was not free. So I'm not asking you the textbook, but I'm assuming that it went something like this. Either you had to subscribe to a service that produced the textbook and gave it to you during the life that you were enrolled, or a 3-year license to get it, and then it went away. Or you bought the hard copy, and with the hard copy you have access to the online part. Is it something like that? Both options. Let's see, you were the same? Similar? Similar? Okay. So those are textbooks that are not open education resources. They are with the $ part here. There's some money that goes along with them. There are some e-textbooks where faculty will say, okay, or the publisher will say, okay, you can use this, but there's a password behind it. So you have to be enrolled in the class in order to get access to this. And this, for example, an example of this might be faculty notes. That while you're in my class, that you go into the learning management system and there's a portal, and you don't have to pay for access to my notes, but it's password inside a password. The community cannot find them by just looking it. And then you have open educational resources, which are textbooks that you can look up. So if you were to look up Illowsky, or you go to the connection site, it's there. You don't need any password. All the material is there, and you can look at it. Questions on e-textbooks? Online learning, same way. Let's see. Coursera would be an example. We have Connor here from Coursera. Free, but inside a password. That's actually an example of online learning and a MOOC, right? It's free, but it's inside there. There are other online learnings that you have to pay. So I did my PhD mostly online. So in order to get into the materials, I had to be paying for the university, and then I had access to the online library. You can have a subscription. So for example, if you want a subscription to the Wall Street Journal, we have the paper subscription. With that comes a password so that I could read it online if I want to. But there's also online learning that's totally free. There are lots of things. So if I wanted to learn, here's an example. I wanted to learn how to make French onion soup, okay? Not that it's this hot now, but for the winter, I would like to learn how to make French onion soup. One is I can look up online, get a recipe. And another one is I could look up online and I could see a video of somebody on how to chop onions, how to debone or fillet a chicken, right? Something like this. A lot of these are free. Some of them are open education resources, meaning I could then post how to do the chicken on my own website. Other ones are behind a password protection, and it says copyright blah, 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 and there's no Creative Commons license. So I wouldn't be able to go in, for example, into Weight Watchers, download the recipe, then post them on my website of Barbara's favorite recipes, lightened up, or whatever it would be. Okay, now let's talk about concerns about open ed resources. So here are the concerns that I'm hearing from around the state, that if we have OER, this will kill our academic freedom. We're a faculty member. We know what's best for our class. We know what resources we want to use. We know what texts we're going to use. And if there's this library, 1053, uh-oh, guess what's going to happen? My college administrator is going to come to me and say, look, you're teaching this class, and right here, I see a free book that Chris wrote. You know, if you use that free book, you can save students' lives. They won't have to drop out of school because it's too expensive. They will be forever grateful, and our college will be able to put our emblem on it, and we can produce it. Okay, that's the type of pressure that I hear from, oh, that's the second bullet, the administration. Pressure from the legislature. People are concerned that if the legislature puts $5 million into this open course library, they want to see that it's being used. And we all know how we would feel with our congresspeople calling and checking with our presidents to see if we used the open ed resources that they voted for in there. We don't want that pressure. A lot of people, and rightly so, I just put, you can fill in the 2 letters that you want to after the CR that are in there with the asterisks and the percent sign. Are we going to be forced to use some of this, whatever it is, on the web, that just because it's out there, it's not necessarily good? We want to be able to pick what's good, and we might have to learn to teach differently. So I can just tell you for myself, the book that I co-authored, it's available online, internet access. Connections has an application, so it's on my Android, and I actually have students who they're not my age, so they can read the phone up close and go through it. There is an iPad app from No Corporation where they can flip through the graphics and the pages. They can do their laptop. This forces me to teach somewhat differently because I encourage my students, bring your computers to class, bring your mobile devices to class. Please turn off the sound. I would really appreciate it so we don't hear everybody's different sounds all day. And bring your laptops, and don't buy the hard copy. The hard copy for 700 pages or 650 is $26, but I still would rather the students save the $26 if they can. Now, some students do want to highlight and take notes and have the physical hard copy, and that's their choice. But I want to give students the choice. So when they're really down to the wire of, my child needs to have lunch, my child needs this for a school trip, my child needs that, I'm trying to juggle all these different things, is that a $26 that I need to pay? Let them decide what to do. Or what's worse, how many of you have students who just don't buy the book and they try to get through? I see a lot of nodding in here. They don't buy the book because they figure I'll get by, right? And they're already now disadvantaged in the class. So now you might say, wait a minute, if a student has a laptop, he or she has probably access to the material, and that might be the case. But other students, if they come in my office and they don't have, you know, a laptop or a computer or internet access, I'll give them a CD, a blank CD. You can buy them at Costco or Fry's or anywhere, 100 CDs for practically nothing. Say, here's a CD, go to the media center, download the PDF, and then just print whatever pages that you want. And you can have whatever pages you want. And they find, first they want to print out the whole book, and then they realize they don't want to print out the whole book, and then they realize, oh, I really just need to print out a couple, maybe the summary from each chapter that gives the formulas and so on. But it does involve a little bit of teaching differently. And one of the questions I hear is, what if they're surfing the web in class? What if they're texting their friends? So I'll just be, since the camera can only see me and not you, I'll just put it out there. We had 2 really good morning sessions. How many of you did some sort of multitasking during at least one of the sessions? So there are about 4 people lying in this room. So just for you who are out there, no, I won't call anybody a liar. Almost everybody raised their hand. How many of you with your multitasking did it involve some form of an electronic device? Right. Okay, me too, right? Everybody's like, yeah. So why would we hate our students to do this, right? We think that what we have to do is so important. But actually what I find out is that as I walk around the room, some of the students will quickly put away their stuff, but students are getting out what they want. And I will tell you, our students, for the most part, are much better at multitasking than we are because they've grown up with that. They can do that. And the other part is, very often they're surfing for something that actually relates to the course. That's what I find. I walk around and they didn't understand the word I said. There was some word I said and they're trying to check the spelling with somebody and they've got dictionary.com up there. Okay, that's good. Or they're looking up in Wikipedia. Or they know I'm wrong. I said something and they know that I'm wrong. So they're looking for the proof to find I'm wrong, which at least most of the time shows that I'm not wrong, that I'm correct in what it is. And they find something and they learn something. But that is a different way of teaching. And I still have faculty who are still using the same text and they say, no, they have to have the hard copy in it. Or they have to at least print out the pages. Or if they're not going to have the hard copy, then they can't use any electronic devices. So I just think, to me, in my mind, this whole battle is the same from when I first started teaching at the college level over the discussion over using calculators in the classroom. To me, it's just a change. We had this huge battle. If you use a calculator, you're cheating. And I teach statistics, and the part was you're cheating because if they use a calculator to find the values for the normal distribution, they're cheating because they should be using the tables in the back of the book. And how will they ever learn how to use the tables? Well, the tables are just a summary of calculations from the computer. So what's the difference anyways? I want them to understand how to use all of this. Okay, so that's one concern. In my mind, so remember, we're worried about OER killing academic freedom. I personally think it enhances academic freedom. I think I have a lot more choice now. The department might choose a book, but that doesn't mean I can't bring content into my class. I can, of course, change the book. I can look up and I can put in a little video. I can do something else. I can assign them a video. I can assign them an article to read. So I think it gives me more academic freedom when I'm teaching. It allows me to customize to my class. As much as people say, well, your discipline, I think everything is the same across colleges, but in my discipline, I want to do this. It's the same thing with mathematics and just about every other discipline. You want to customize it to what you're doing, and I can customize. Also, it saves on revisions. So we're in this cycle where every 3 years, the publishers come out with a new edition, and it's really hard to get the old edition of a book. And of course, we don't adopt a book right on day one of that edition coming out. We might be year 2 into it and then backtrack. So it saves, it's customizable. You can make changes right away. Okay, so let's go on to MOOCs. So we have the happy MOOC and the sad MOOC here. So I'll talk a little bit about these. All right, here are the concerns I hear from across the country. And I'm pretty connected. I live in Silicon Valley. I work in Sacramento. So I've been full-time faculty at De Anza College for about 25 years almost. Dr. Thor, who was on that panel, is my current chancellor. I've had grants from the Hewlett Foundation involved with the OER. One of my children, my daughter, went to Stanford University, and 2 of her courses were taught by Andrew Ng, who's co-founder of Coursera, which is in there. I've been involved with a lot of this stuff. And so here are the concerns that summarize up what I hear. Poor instruction quality. That's a big one. Low completion rates. Learner support is minimal. Assessment for credit is costing money. Sustainability is unknown. So let's just address them. Why would I assume, as a community college faculty member, that the instruction from a faculty member at MIT or Princeton or UPenn, my alma mater for graduate school, or Stanford will be worse than the instruction that I could give in my class? Why do we assume that? There's that assumption that, well, those are researchers, they're not really doing that. If that were the case, we would not be sending our children to universities, right? I assume that the instruction is really good coming from those courses, and I didn't complete, I'm one of the lurkers. I took several classes, and I saw really good instruction from the faculty who were in there. Now, they may not be the instruction that's needed for our particular students, in that the students who were my daughter's classmates at Stanford were not coming through basic skills courses as adults in there, for the most part. I would say for almost every part of it. But that doesn't mean that the instruction quality is bad. Why would I think that? On top of that, they have access to money. You know, that's really good. When you have access to money, you can hire graduate students. How many of you were those graduate students who were hired to do all the menial things, right? That was me, how I got through grad school. But along the way, I learned an awful lot. And I learned even that I wanted to be a teacher. That was one of the things I did learn going in. So I don't have any reason to assume that if a course comes out of these high-end universities, they're bad courses. You have a question? Well, we don't, but right now, that's where they are. We don't have the guarantee, except for the one course in Coursera that came from community college faculty. That was Mount San Jacinto, Pat James, Ted Blake, and I've forgotten the other people. So those are already our peers, right? We already know about them. We know they're good on there. But I am assuming that, in fact, one of the courses I took from Keith Devlin at Stanford, I've actually, in one of the math organizations that I belong to, we hired him as a keynote. We know he's good. I've seen him give probably 7 talks by now. I listened to him on the radio. So why do I think that that instruction would be poor, especially when he has access to do so much? So that is a concern, but we have that concern with every class. Yeah.
Can I just really quickly
Sure.
play devil's advocate though? I think there is an assumption that just because it's a lecture mode, I think there's an assumption that a lot of MOOCs are a lecture mode. It's just a one-person broadcasting.
Right.
And a lecture does not equal an online instruction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. The question, because this is being recorded, I'm going to repeat the question. The question was maybe, or maybe I'm embellishing it, maybe not just the teaching part of it, the lecture part of it, but that the entire course is lecture. And so that's not good instruction per se, and that's not necessarily what we can do in our online classes with 30 students or 35 students. That's absolutely the case. And I think a lot of that depends. In fact, I'm going to be hopefully teaching a MOOC in January, which will be a bridge to statistics, sort of the beginning part of elementary statistics, going over means, medians, modes, histograms. And that's true. It will be a lot of lecture, but hopefully with the interaction, I'll be able to design it that the student threads and the student peer groups will be able to have the other part that I can't give. Well, let me just get through some more of it, then I'll take some questions. Low completion rates, absolutely. 5 to 15% is typical. I was just, this year, I am spending this year and next year working at the Chancellor's office, and budgets are tight at the California Community College Chancellor's office. So when I decided to present, as you know, if you're presenting, your registration is waived. And I called my dear friend Pat James, who's running this conference. I said, Pat, could I share a room with you and you'll pay for it? Because I know you already have your room. And she said yes. So in the room the night before last, she and Anna from Mount San Jacinto, they were printing the certificates. So I hope that if this is trade secret, sorry, Connor, but I'm going to be saying it anyways. They started with about 37,000 people. I was one of those 37,000 people who didn't complete, and they were issuing 2,700 certificates. So on the one hand, and when I get to my next diagram, you'll see on the one hand, yep, that fits in with that 5 to 15% completion rate. Learner support, the online tutoring is a part that really needs to be improved upon if we want to make this standard. And you know, MOOCs right now, let me just finish this part and then I'll take questions because of the timing. MOOCs right now, I've been in discussions with several of the companies, and the demographics are varied, but I think that all of the companies, Coursera, Udacity, edX, have data to show that there are at least a lot, and I won't say a majority, I won't say 90%, 80%, 40%, 30%, but there are a lot of people in the MOOCs who already have graduate degrees so far as college graduates, some masters, some PhDs. There are a lot, Pat told me that there were a lot of people who were teachers of English writing who were in their class. So learner support needs to come from peers inside the class. As a faculty member, you can't be dealing with 37,000 questions of where do I find the? It's on the home page. How do I submit my answers? You press the button. You know, those are the types of questions that we get. I don't know if you get it in your online class. I'm very organized. On the front page, in bold, in capital letters, in a larger font, it gives the date of every test. It's also on our calendar. And the most common question I get, two most common, do we have to submit our homework? Right? This is why it says the homework is due on this day at this time. You press submit. That would be a hint. And when is our exam? And the other students can answer that. I usually leave that for a while. If I find that enough people are asking it, that means to me I didn't design the course well enough. If there are a few people asking it, and usually I answer questions to my students much more politely than their classmates do. In fact, I have to train them on how do you answer a stupid question, like do we have to turn in the homework or when is the test and so on. Sustainability, totally up there. We don't know anything about sustainability. We hope that it will be sustainable, but the truth is the internet could be shut down tomorrow or this afternoon. We could lose computer technology right in the middle of this presentation, so we don't really know. So I want to just address this last part, and then I'll take questions, because I know there are some, but I really want to get through why I think the MOOCs are such a fabulous part, and why I'm not threatened by them. And you might say, oh, you're in mathematics, there's always going to be people who need math help. Well, you know what? I would love nothing more than to have to, I was the scheduler for the math department. I was scheduling close to 600 sections of mathematics at De Anza a year. I would love nothing more than to cut that in half because students get through with a passing grade the first time. That would be the best thing that we would have if intermediate algebra success rate went from 70% to 98% and we had fewer sections. Wouldn't that be great? Right? If all your classes were wonderful. So here's the way I'm looking at it, and now that I'm in the chancellor's office, I'm looking at it from a system-wide approach of how do we save the taxpayers millions of dollars. We know that nationally we have hundreds of thousands of students that are wanting to be in our community colleges. Either they're enrolled at our community colleges or they want to join the community colleges, and they are not placing at the transfer level for mathematics and English. We know that. We know it's about 70% nationwide that come in and they're at a pre-transfer level in at least one course. Some of your colleges, when I oversee the Basic Skills Initiative at the Chancellor's Office, and some of your colleges, I know that that number is close to 90% that are at least one level below. We know that at some schools there are long wait lists. There may be shorter wait lists now that the 3 times to take a course includes W's, but there are still long wait lists, and we know that. So we have a lot of students. We also know that 18-year-olds who have just come from their senior night all-night party and are thrilled to be graduating are not studying up for their placement test for the most part. It's like, yeah, I had to take the STAR test. I had to take the CASI test. I had to do this. I had to do that. Yeah, I'm going to go in. We also know that very often we have students coming to the community college for a variety of reasons. Some are coming in because they're ready to go into freshman composition. They're ready to go into calculus. They're ready to take these classes and they can't afford it, or they don't want to move away from home, or they've just made that decision. We also know that there are a lot of students who will say, I'm only going to community college for college, so I don't have to pay attention in high school. Forgetting that the idea of high school is that they learn the basics so that they can do well once they go there. So we know that. We also know that at one point of time, people did pass these courses in high school. They passed elementary algebra. They passed geometry, even if it was a C or a C minus. They passed 9th grade writing. They passed 10th grade writing. They passed literature classes. And the taxpayer dollars paid for them. And a lot of them just need a review. In fact, I would need a review. If I was going to go back now, and when I teach a course, how many of you do this? When I teach a course that I haven't taught in a long time, I go back and I study the content. Do any of you need to do that? Okay? It's not that I don't know that, right? It's not that, it's just, you know, I took it at age 18. I still need to go back and I need to review it. I need to look at things. I might not quite remember all of this. So we do. And we know that sometimes we just need to take a review before we do the placement. So here's my Barbara's vision of MOOCs for the California Community College system. What if we get community college faculty to develop these MOOCs and to produce them, to transfer them, similar to the way Mount San Jacinto did it? What if, before students take their placement test, we can convince them, or what if they take a pre-placement test that doesn't count? So guess what? They could even cheat. Who cares, right? It doesn't count. And we could say, you know what? Here's where you would place if you were going to take your placement test right now. Sometimes that's a bit of a wake-up call. Holy cow, I was taking pre-calculus in high school. I'm going to place into arithmetic because I forgot which way you flip the fractions when you divide them, or English writing, I forgot how to pull out the main sentence, but I'm pretty good at this. So what if we develop them? We take ownership and we say, we're going to develop them, we're going to make them. And what if there's this large subset, so now you're getting your math lesson for summer school, this large subset of the population that really just needs to review. They really just need a review. And let's say, as most of the MOOCs have found, that just a small group actually pass. Okay, just a small group actually pass. So here comes our mathematics problem for the day. The population, this whole screen, is our pre-transfer level students who are going to take our placement tests. Out of that population, the blue group is the group that really needs to review. And let's say we can get a lot of them to take a MOOC to review. And the little orange is just this small group passes. So everybody got that? So now I'll put it into numbers. The way we teach it mathematically is we try to explain the theory, we show a picture, and we get down to it. Okay, here's the words part, the word problems that everybody has, and then I'll do the numbers. So this small group might save one semester to graduate. That one semester saves taxpayer dollars, right? Also means not only are they saving taxpayer dollars, they're working one semester early, which means they're paying taxes one semester early. And they might even take some ownership and feel responsible. Like, yes, I got out of that class, yes. So, in other words, okay, here come the numbers. Let's say 100,000 students take a MOOC on an English course or a math course that's pre-transfer level. Let's do a really low success rate, 6%. That's pretty poor, right? I would not be happy teaching face-to-face or online if only 6% of my students do it. So let's say just 6% place into one course higher. Math is an easy one to explain because it goes up pre-algebra, which is a lot of arithmetic stuff, elementary algebra, intermediate algebra, transfer math. English has the same number of levels, but the courses aren't always devised the same. So let's say only 6% of the students place in. Pretty common success rate. So we know, basically, like me, like all of us who took a MOOC except for you, the rest of us are failures, 94% failures. Okay? That's pretty bad, especially if you're in your tenure process, right? That's pretty bad. But I'm always the glass is half full person, not the glass is half empty. What that tells us is, 6,000 students have succeeded. Raise your hand if you've taught a class that had 6,000 successes in it. Okay, so out there in little virtual land, nobody here is raising their hand. So we teach this class, and we have a 94% success rate. 6,000 students. Raise your hand if you have 6,000 students in 1 year who pass all your classes collectively in your classes. No. Right? I'm teaching about 120 a quarter. We're on the quarter system. So without any overloads, I have 350 to 400 students a year in my classes, even if every one of them passed. That's as far. So right now, here's where I see the situation. I read the Chronicle of Higher Ed daily. I read some of the other educational journals. Everybody's fighting over all of this, fighting over MOOCs, fighting over open education resources, fighting over the Senate legislating it. But what I'm hoping is a shorter time to completion, more graduations, and happy people on there. So I am going to take your questions on this. And let's see, Rob, you had a question first, if you remember it.
Another way of looking at this is not as a course in themselves, but as a resource in a course that you are teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use it selectively. You can use only a portion of it. Your students don't really need to complete that if it's part of something you're doing. You can say, look at the first 3, 4 lectures. Those are excellent. Then they go off on a tangent that we're not going to pursue. But it gives them just more resources.
And an example of that, so Rob's point was that you could take parts of MOOCs and use them for part of your classes. You can do that if they are open educational resource MOOCs, meaning that anybody can go in. It's hard to do. So for example, with the corporate companies that are organized to eventually be for-profit, I can't actually go into those MOOCs, pull out their content, and put them in my website. Khan Academy is an open education resource that I can go and I can put that onto my website. The other ones, you can't actually do that, but that's exactly the point. When I took a course, one of the courses I took was from UC Irvine. They had a personal finance course, and I took it because I wanted to see, you know, I'm a helicopter mother, I have 3 children in their late 20s. I wanted to see if this would be good material for my children, who are still in my mind, my babies, on how to organize their finances. They're just starting up with mortgages and with all of that, and I wanted to see, would this be helpful to help them develop budget plans for their lives and how to do their mortgages and how to get their finances in. You know, sometimes if any of you are parents, you know that if it comes from someone else, anyone else, it doesn't even matter who that other person is, it actually is more correct than if it comes from mom or dad in there. So I was looking for that part of the material. So that's an example. Yeah. Let me take the question that was in the back.
I wanted to ask you to unpack one of the statements you said in court about tutoring.
Right.
And I wanted to say, I wanted to ask you, tutoring in terms of utilization of tutoring and in terms of the kind of online resources. Could you just kind of
Okay, so the question was, what did I mean by improved tutoring? Right. So I'm not talking about, and I'm not referring to the quality of the tutors. Right. It's the same thing when we talk about full-time versus adjunct faculty. It's, in my mind, it's not a question of the quality of full-time versus adjunct. It's as full-timers, we have connections more to school. We have connections more to resources on campus that adjuncts don't have. The same thing with the MOOCs. Unless you can figure out a way to get more student services incorporated. I mean, this is actually, here we're at the online teaching conference, but that's actually the same thing I emphasize for the Basic Skills Initiative. The money comes from course registration or something else, but we need to spend the money on the student services that go in and support the students in the online classes. I've heard Dr. Thor speak several times because she's the chancellor at my district, but for her to say at Rio Salado, when they had 80 to 90% success rates in their distance learning classes, I'm good. I don't have 80 to 90% success rates. Maybe after the students get to the last W date, the ones that remain could be there, but not from day one or not even from census. There's that whole huge W. In fact, when I teach online, maybe you experience the same thing. I have a bimodal distribution. I have many more A's than I ever have in my face-to-face class, and I have many more DFs, W's than I ever have in my face-to-face class. Face-to-face class, I might have 1 DF, 2 W's or so, 6 A's, but in my distance learning, it's pretty much assigning them A's, assigning them non-passing grades. And I think that with the MOOCs, there needs to be a way. I mean, one of the things that I'm trying to figure out, I'm struggling with this myself. I really want to teach this MOOC in January as a 4-week bridge because, one, I want to understand sort of the cool factor of how can we build a system to save taxpayer dollars. And this might be one way. If we can do it with this bridge to statistics And Pat's did it with the English reading class. Maybe we could do it with arithmetic. Maybe we could do it with elementary algebra. Maybe we could do it with the review of principles that you need before taking a history course, before taking French review or Spanish review, and so on. So I'm interested in the academic story, but I'm also worried because when I talk to the professors who've done the MOOCs, and I've talked with ones from University of Michigan, from Stanford, and from UPenn, they had lots of graduate students. And these were colleges that had lots of research money. So they weren't taking out of their own money, here, I'm going to give you $4,000 to be a monitor in my class. We don't have that in the community college system. Even if you were to have work study, how are you going to find somebody who's a work study student, gets assigned to your class, is at the level that they could come in and they could be of assistance? So that's what I mean is mostly more the access to the student services. Yeah. We probably have time for two more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Barbara, since not all MOOCs are OER, what's the simplest way to find them online without searching all over?
So if you want to do an OER MOOC, right now, most of them are not. Most of them are free to sign up, but the content is all copyrighted and owned behind there. So I can help find OER resources to use in your class for textbooks. Doesn't matter the discipline. There are many repositories that have open ed resource. In fact, Una, probably right now, I think she's doing her session on how do you find them. But there are webinars that CCC OER, California Community College Open Ed Resource, and that James is the president of the advisory board right now. They're doing webinars and they're all archived. And so if you go to OCW Consortium, that's where you would find lots of the archives of them. Okay, one last question. It was over here somewhere. No? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Another one, if we could back up to the OER legislation.
Right.
You said that we're looking for $5 million matching, so the legislature did appropriate $5 million?
The legislature appropriated $5 million that they would release when we get the matching $5 million. It's intended to pay the development of the library, the infrastructure of the computer, the website, to pay faculty time to either search for OER, write them. Most likely to me, what I see is we would search for it, and then people would customize for what they need. Yeah. Okay, so thanks everybody. Good work, all of you.